It's a well-known fact at this point in our nation's history that New York's Attorney General Letitia James is, shall we say, a pro at politically motivated charges against her opponents. I mean, just look at President Trump's year-long history of conflict with Attorney General James since he became president. I mean, literally hundreds of millions of dollars in fines that the president is still fighting in court. Well, the latest victim with Attorney General James' politically motivated punitive actions is the New York Families Foundation's executive director, Jason McGuire. You may have heard of all of this by now. He's been on this program, in fact, many times in the past. The New York Families Foundation is one of many family policy councils nationwide that work to promote faith, family, and freedom, and they do so at the state level, whatever state they may be on. Well, we've got a developing situation coming out of New York, and joining me now to unpack this situation is Craig DeRoche. He's the president and CEO of the Family Policy Alliance. Craig, welcome back to Washington Watch. It's great to have you.
Jody, it's a real privilege to be with you. It's a pretty dark thing going on, but one that God's got his hands on and the audience needs to hear about.
Well, amen to both of those facts, and I want you to unpack it for us. Before we get there, maybe let's start with a little historical backdrop of all of this. If you can kind of give us a little bit of history in terms of New York's Attorney General Letitia James as it relates specifically to politically motivated investigations against conservatives, we'll just put it that way, generally speaking, and pro-lifers, but conservatives.
Absolutely. So it's become more common that we know that liberal prosecutors prosecutors in America don't have checks and balances like other elected offices. They get their budget and then they kind of are off to the races. The checks and balances are supposed to be defense attorneys, but only Donald Trump, and she made it even hard for a former president of the United States billionaire to keep up with her because she can leverage the entire weight and power of the government. And she's not doing it to follow any legal basis under the color of law in her job. She just has been using it as a political organizer for several years now. It hasn't caught up to her, but with what she's doing with President Trump and now what she's doing with Jason McGuire, there's a lot of people even on the left, Jody, that are saying this could wind up costing New York many millions, if not more than hundreds of millions, as well as end up putting her behind bars with some of the investigations are uncovering about her actual criminal activity in these endeavors.
Wow. All right, so let's narrow this down. What's happening in the case now with our friend, New York Families Foundation Executive Director, Jason McGuire? You mentioned this, so wind it down, sum it up for us. What's going on there?
Yeah, so what happened was Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York, it is her place to look after nonprofits. She just hasn't done it before, but for anybody except for Christian conservative ones or the President of the United States. And what she did was she went on what Donald Trump, the president, calls a witch hunt. And people might not know what that means, but she was using her power to subpoena documents and hire forensic auditors to look for T crossings and I dottings with the hopes that she could find something. There wasn't any crime committed. She did this for 3 years. She subpoenaed over 7,000 documents and had scores of attorneys and staff people doing this. And what she found after all these years in 2025 was that there were 6 receipts missing from a filing that should have been included in 2019. And that is the letter of the law. He had the receipts, he just didn't include them. He didn't steal money, didn't do anything. But to the letter of the law, that is actually a violation. So we're negotiating, and he's negotiating. He's raising hundreds of thousands of dollars. She's using every tactic to try to get him in jail on this side of the state, his wife in another county on the other side, to separate the family while they're raising their kids. Maximum pressure. It was all to get our donor lists. And he showed up at the end of the thing and said, wait a second, all I was doing is missing these receipts. Here they are. And they said that's the letter of the law. They got the judge to say the next step is you have to turn over your donor list. So he said, well, then I'm guilty, and thinking, whatever, I'll just pay a fine. You don't get to do what the NAACP won the victory from the Supreme Court in 1958 to do, to become the thought police. And the judge radically, along with the prosecutor, said, we'll teach you Christians a lesson until you get under our heel, until you hand over your sermons and your donor lists, you will spend time incarcerated. So he was incarcerated until 6 a.m. this morning, and he's got to go back, Jody, for 6 more weekends. That is the banana republic justice system in New York State that is being carried out right now as I'm on the show.
Yeah, I mean, that's just, it is so disturbing to think that this is actually happening right here in the United States. As I understand it, this is not the first time that the New York Families Foundation has been targeted. Am I correct in that?
That's what I'm saying. So they targeted them for this thing with and actually it was from a 2018 campaign, Jody, if you can imagine this. That's what we mean by lawfare. If you can imagine, and now there's been some scrutiny on Letitia James, where people have, she's been out there pointing out to 330 Americans how badly they stink at their life, and that she's willing to lock up everybody except for Diddy, it seems, is a criminal in New York with serious charges. And she comes after these folks, and people are starting to say to her, wait a second, you're filling out mortgage applications with fraudulent information, which actually is criminal intent. When people don't turn in their receipts on some paperwork filing, that's what we call a mistake in America. And then, Jody, what happened after this was pointed out to her, as we push back on our side against Pride Month, they seem to embrace it. When she was pointed out the errors of her ways, she doubled down. She issued a press release saying he stole $16,000 from the nonprofit. She's had since 2018 to investigate that. He was the CEO. He's allowed to pay himself $16,000 a year. That's pretty underpaid for New York, from what I've been reading. She accused him of stealing that. He paid taxes, whatever it was. There's no IRS or whatever. So she feels so empowered right now, Jody, to cover up. She's incarcerating a Christian for not handing over his donor list, that she's now trying to say he stole $16,000, and she's had 7 years to enter that into a court record. So we're just trying to bring this forward. We're so grateful to Washington Watch. We're still the little guys, right? Donald Trump got to, her lawfare got to be on the news. Our guy's already been incarcerated for 4 nights, and we're trying to get your audience to plug in and get behind Pray, Vote, Stand. We're going to be there, Jody, by the way. All of our groups are going to be there. We hope you're all there, but we need your support right now to help Jason. We need this issue to become known in America, what she's doing to smaller people besides the governors and the president.
Wow. Have you ever seen anything like this? I mean, let's just, I can't think of a situation, but from what you're describing, I mean, we're talking a misdemeanor of that amounts to at least allegedly paperwork errors, and he's spending time in jail? Yes.
2 weekends already, and he already has his wrongful incarceration and his defamation suits. But folks, our law system is designed to be slow, and he'll get his relief. He'll probably never have to work again in a few years. But right now, a human being is incarcerated because he's trying to stand up for the lives of the unborn. That's what this is over. She wanted our donor list. She wanted to suppress this, trying to protect women in girls' sports. That's all that this thing is about. And unfortunately, Jody, yeah, you're talking to a guy that got prosecuted in 2010 for 2.5 years for possession of a firearm while intoxicated, and I didn't even have a gun. Liberals, when they can take down a conservative, I won that case, by the way. You can read all the headlines, but it's published law. They literally made it up, and people weren't used to that back in 2010. For police and prosecutors to manufacture an event and prosecute a former Speaker of the House in Michigan. But absolutely, Chuck Colson hired me the first day I met him. I could give you story after story after story of the most egregious things you've ever heard. But know this coming from me and from the Chuck Colsons of the world. There are people that are Christians that did things wrong, and I'm one of them. God has used me in my experience to benefit other people. So this isn't about me. It's about seeing a case very clearly. I sat in the front row of Rosa Parks' funeral, and I could see who Riley Gaines was instantly. It took America 7 years to figure out that Rosa was just there first. Riley had worked for 10,000 hours in 20 years to get her seat. A much more egregious outstep. And on this, I worked for justice reform for 15 years and stood next to Donald Trump. That's one of the pictures behind me signing the First Step Act. And people thought that that was squishy or weird. It's not. Our Constitution, the left warps it to take away our life as Christians when we're breathing after we're born, equally the same ways they try to take away our liberty and our freedom and our life before we're born. It's evil and it needs to be confronted. It's already in the Constitution. And this is what unifies, I think, the social conservative movement.
Wow. Craig, do you think that this is what's happening in New York, what you're describing, happening more broadly? Is this a hostility against conservative family values? Is this more widely a spiritual battle for the soul of our nation that we're watching across the country? How would you describe what you're seeing as this type of thing is broadening?
What I'd say is it's the same people doing the same things for the same reasons that they did it to black people in the 50s, that they did to women before they allowed them to vote, and everything else. There's a certain group of people that are under the possession of the evil one, and they know that if human beings are treated equally and given dignity, and if their life and their liberty comes from the hand of God, that means that everybody from AOC to this prosecutor, Letitia James, all the way up to Donald Trump, can't tell them who lives or dies. That's what America is. It's an affront to the devil because that's our freedom and our liberty. And that's what they've been trying to do since Thomas Jefferson wrote that we're all created equal. This is the belly of the beast. And usually they only do this about abortion. But in this case, Jody, she's crossed so many lines using the criminal justice. I believe that liberals and progressives, how can they defend her actions? They just spent the last 20 years talking about incarcerating people that act like she's acting. So this is one that I really think we need to talk about.
Wow. Real quickly, how do we need to be praying about this situation with Jason?
Pray for Jason that God is already using him just for guard his heart and to be safe physically with what she's trying to torture him physically and mentally. Spiritually, the spirit is vibrating off of Jason, as you'd expect. I hope when he's through this, come back on your show. But be praying for Letitia James too. She is setting herself up to be one of these American figures that books will be written about that we have to move on from to progress toward that more perfect union, the arc of justice bending toward, humanity and justice that Martin Luther King talked about. She's an example of what we need to get rid of in public policy. I'm not trying to say that as a person. I wrote in one of my pieces today, I probably did worse things when I was Speaker of the House in Michigan than she does as Attorney General. It doesn't mean you don't call people out. It doesn't mean you don't remove them for office for cause when they're acting this way. It's extra constitutional, and she is literally the tip of the spear of what is wrong with lawfare in America.
Wow. Shifting gears real quickly, we've just got a couple of minutes, but the Family Policy Alliance just recently wrapped up another very successful social conservative policy conference. What were some of your big public policy takeaways from that event?
So, folks, here's the thing. You heard my frustration before, and I've had to spend time in jail for things I did wrong. So I'm angry today, maybe a little more than the spirit would have me be angry, but I am so full of hope. Thank you for saying that, Jody. We had such a big event for there's over 350 different social conservative groups as big as Focus on the Family and ADF and First Liberty and people like that. And folks, the core, everybody knows that Family Research Council and Family Policy Alliance are kind of like sister organizations. FRC does a lot of federal stuff. We have a lot of strength in the states. And Jody, I think it was just really a powerful 1-2 punch because a lot of the social conservative progress we've been making over the last decade was in the states, right? But now it's ripe for us to do it in Congress. We have a lot of bipartisan support for some of the ending this gender insanity. We're hearing some breakthroughs on that. That was really the breakthrough. I think the gender insanity is showing signs of abating. The public polling on that is about 85% to 15%. If you're wondering how long it's going to take for Gavin Newsom and Gretchen Whitmer to come around, but they're still fighting it. But we are clearly winning on that one, Jody.
Well, I could not agree with you anymore. And I think that certainly has to be a priority going forward, both on the state level as well as the federal. And Craig, I just want to say thank you for standing the gap, your own battles, standing in this for so many battles, so much water under the bridge of your life and your leadership and willingness to stand up and be counted. I just want to personally say, and do so publicly, thank you. We deeply appreciate it, and thank you for joining us today on Washington Watch.
Thank you. I want to say who introduced me to Tony Perkins the first time was Chuck Colson. So I just want to leave you with that.
Awesome.
Thank you, Jody.
That's great. Thank you, Craig DeRoche of the Family Policy Alliance.